We're going to begin by installing a number of packages, very familiar ones, but one important new one, and that's NLTK, which is for Natural Language Toolkit. And this is actually a very, very large package that's extremely powerful for dealing with unstructured text, things like novels, things like magazine articles or blog posts or tweets. And it serves as one of the major reasons for using Python for data mining, the availability of the Natural Language Toolkit. We're going to do a very modest analysis using it, but let's start by installing these packages. Now I have them installed already, so I can see that we're good to go here. Then we need to load them. Now these ones at the top, codex, which is for regular expressions, copy, and collections, those are already in Python, but we have to call those ones up. And we're going to use some special functions from those. And then we have several from Natural Language Toolkit. And let's run those and get them available. That's our matplotlib font cache warning we see every single time. It's probably already taken care of. Now what we're going to do is we have to download one more thing. Natural Language Toolkit has some very special functions, and they're not all included when you install it. What you need, for instance, is a corpus or a collection of words that can be used to count things. We're going to get just the stop words. That's like the, and, the little words that we probably don't want to include in our analysis. Now, the easiest way to do this is with nltk.download and then stop words. That tells us we only want the stop words, and that's a very quick download. There it is. On the other hand, if you've got time on your hands and a very good internet connection, you can download everything in NLTK. This can take over half an hour, and you might think that your machine's broken. But then you have an enormous amount of code and an enormous amount of power at your disposal. But we're just going to use the stop words for now. That's all we need. And now that we've downloaded the stop words, we can import them and make them available to our code. Now we're going to read our data. We're going to use Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, and we're going to use the codex command open, and then this specifies how we're going to read them. So we got the two of those read. That's very quick considering they're both entire novels. We're going to also check the English stop words. This is simply putting together from our corpus words that we're going to deal with. There's those. And now what we're going to do is we're going to filter some tokens using regular expressions. That's where the RE regular expressions function comes in. We need to count the tokens. A token is a word when it gets split up. So the, and, or, you separate those, they become separate tokens. Now we're actually going to define a function here to count them. And it says we're going to use the word.punct tokenizer where we use punctuation. And it gives some very specific choices about how we're going to split it. There's a lot of options available in NLTK. And obviously we could have a whole series of much longer presentations about this. But I'm going to go through this and just define our token counter. And then another function to calculate the absolute frequency of words in each one. So it says this word appeared 100 times, this word appeared 93 times, this word appeared 17 times. And then the relative frequency. And that's important because the two books that we're comparing are different lengths. And so by getting them to percentages or proportions, it makes it easier to compare their frequency across the two documents. So we'll define that one. And now we can analyze the individual texts. We're going to do this with our counter here. We're calling it JE counter, JE size. And this is where we count the tokens. Now this one can take a while because it's having to make a lot of passes through the data to count things. So I'm going to get that one started. Now we did a little time lapse here. That actually took about 3 or 4 minutes to get these results. But what you can see is the most common words in Jane Eyre. In terms of absolute frequency, the word one appears 593, said 584, Mr., so on and so forth. And then the relative frequency converts those into proportions, which allows us to compare them against the frequencies in Wuthering Heights, which is a different length. Now, if you want a larger set of data, we can actually save the 1,000 most common words to a CSV file. We're going to come down here, and actually I'm going to show you something really quickly. On the desktop of my Mac at this exact moment, we have just 3 files. We have the IPython notebook, and we have Jane Eyre, and we have Wuthering Heights. But as soon as I run this command, we're going to have a 4th file. I'm going to go take a quick look at that one. And it's this one right here. Let me do a quick look on that and bring it up. And now you can see we have a really long collection of words. So we see, for instance, that enough appears 107 times, and we keep scrolling down. We get down to the bottom of our 1,000 words. Sympathy appears 17 times. And so that's a pretty rich set of information about Jane Eyre. 1,000 words, their frequencies, and their proportions. Now we can do the same thing for Wuthering Heights. Again, this takes a while, and we're going to do a little time lapse till we get there. So that was quicker. That one took about 90 seconds this time around. And you see that we have a very different set of words. For instance, we actually have several proper names, Heathcliff, Linton, and Catherine, that are appearing most often over anything else. And if we want to get the 1,000 most common from Wuthering Heights and save that to a CSV, we can just do this quick command. And then we can come back to the Finder here. Here's our Wuthering Heights top 1,000. And you see it's a very different set that we've had. We have Zillah 35 times, Former 26, and so on. Let me go back to the Jupyter Notebook. Now, this information is interesting on its own, the statistics about each document separately, but what we really want to do is compare them. Again, these books were published at the same time by two sisters who lived together, but they differ in significant ways. And so what we're going to do is first we find the most common words across the two documents. So we combine the sets. We do that right here. And now that was really fast because now we're only dealing with these tables of 1,000 rows each. And then we create a data frame where we look at the word frequency differences. Now there's a lot of ways to define word frequency differences. In this one, I'm simply looking at subtraction, the absolute value of the difference between the two. You can do ratios, you can do log odds. There's a lot of different ways, and there are strong reasons for picking one over the other. I'm doing this one because it's conceptually very simple, and it'll make some sense when we look at the results. So we have a for loop here, and we're running through the information, creating a new table. We'll do that, and then let's display the most distinctive words in terms of the ones with the greatest absolute difference in their relative frequency. And what we get here is that Heathcliff doesn't appear at all in Jane Eyre, which figures because Heathcliff's not a character in that one. He is in Wuthering Heights. Same thing with Linton. Catherine appears a tiny bit in Jane Eyre, but you come down and see that, for instance, Sir happens more often in Jane Eyre than it does in Wuthering Heights. And you can look at some of these. What's interesting is that most of these are very heavily weighted towards Wuthering Heights. But if you want to see the full list, we can simply save that as a CSV called Bronte. And then we can pop over to that one. And here's our Bronte CSV. And you can see that we have words that differ in their frequency between the two different books. And it allows us to do an interesting comparison of the vocabulary and really some of the ideas that are being communicated by the sisters in their two different novels. That's the idea of text analysis and the text mining that we're able to do with Python and the Natural Language Toolkit.